Are we okay at the back to get going? Thanks, everybody. So listen, thank you so much for spending time with us. I know you have a lot of options and sexy mood lighting today, so it's really nice for you to spend time with us. My name is Toussaint. You already know I'm from Montreal. A little bit about me. I work at Shopify. I am a senior program manager for diversity in engineering. What does that mean? We need diversity everywhere. Why is it just in engineering? Well, we do have a diversity and belonging team globally with Shopify. I managed to sneak in to be a part of a very new and tiny team called DINE, so diversity in engineering. It was better than die, so I added the N in there. We have two main focuses. The first one is to attract top talent, and specifically attracting top talent that come from gender minority groups, as well as racialized communities or underserved communities, whatever terminology you're using these days, and at the same time to decrease attrition of those same communities, so the retention aspect. So we get you in, how are we going to keep you? A little background, I've worked in recruitment for over 10 years. I've done a lot of DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion training. I love speaking to lovely humans and non-humans, however you roll. And I'm really excited to be here today. This is a little panel chat with some new friends I've made. I will let them introduce themselves. We'll start with Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Minn. My pronouns are she, her. I'm based in Chicago. I'm a developer at Thoughtbot and an active member of WNB.RB, a community for women and non-binary Rubyists.
I'm Caterina Paun. My pronouns are also she, her, and I am based in Portland. I have spent, my entire career has been in development, primarily front-end development, but I work, I'm part of the faculty at Portland State University right now.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you with us today. My pronouns are also she, her. Thank you for reminding me. So I've got a few questions that I'm going to ask my lovely panelists. We'll leave room for questions as well, even though we've got just a tiny bit of time together. So first, we've had a lot of conversations, the three of us together, but from what you've seen and heard, what are some of the reasons women, non-binary folks leave tech spaces, in your opinion, and from what you've seen?
Yeah, I can start this one off. From what I've seen and heard from a lot of my friends and just like personal experience, psychological safety is a really big one for us, and feeling safe and having people we trust in our workplace environment. And yeah, having that culture of commitment to making it a space for everyone, and that means, inclusive meetings and inclusive code reviews, and just making sure that, we are holding folks accountable to making that space safe for everyone. Separately, another thing that I've noticed is women and non-binary folks missing out on technical opportunities, being pushed to doing work that's might take more emotional labor and utilize those soft skills. So being pushed into management when they might not be ready. And yeah, not being invested as technically as other people. Caterina, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just occurred to me that I didn't do my full introduction. I also help lead an organization here in Portland, Women Who Code. So I also have, I can share some stories from some of our many members as well. To answer the question specifically, I think it can be so many different things that make it really tough to stay in tech. But many of the things that Stephanie mentioned, but I will also add that specifically when you are, not sort of given the same opportunities in terms of like project scope, in terms of responsibility, when you don't feel like you're getting promoted sort of maybe at the same rate that other people might be, when you don't feel like your work is being valued in the same way that other folks' work is being valued. And I don't necessarily think that, or I'll say that we're lucky with tech because you have the opportunity to switch to other companies, but sometimes it may be that it's sort of like that same story from company to company. And you know, you're not finding that manager and that team that's, you know, helping you thrive in tech. And, you know, after a while, it just makes sense to leave. And then I know that in our chat ahead of this panel, we also talked a little bit about motherhood and how that can also be incredibly difficult. And there's been studies done on this in terms of, you know, mothers and sort of how the pay decreases once they have a child versus how for fathers you sort of are able to stay on that same, you know, salary projection over time. And I think related to that, this is in the Ladies Get Paid book. I don't know if you've read it, but there's a lot of interesting information on there related to motherhood. This thing called the motherhood tax, which is mothers who have their pay decreases by 4% per child they have. And with fathers, it's sort of like a fatherhood bonus where their salary typically increases by 4%. And so I think when you put all of that together, you know, there's a lot of reasons where people don't feel like supported within the environment they're at, and they end up leaving.
Yeah, because I imagine, and I'm not a parent, well, unless you count LeVar Burton, but I don't. He's fine. You know, coming back to work after maternity leave, or we'll call it parental leave, right? Coming back and maybe not having a thoughtful lead or manager who doesn't really recognize some of the flexibility you may require, or coming back and feeling like you're starting over almost, even though, well, you haven't lost your knowledge, you just might need to get right back into it. So it's about kind of being inclusive, and that kind of leads me into the next question. You know, what are our needs? You know, how can companies, so it's leads, colleagues, non-marginalized folks, prioritize those needs? You know, in other words, the inclusive ways that makes us want to stay. What are some of the things that come to mind to make it feel better? You want to start, Caterina? We'll switch it up a little?
Sure. I mean, you know, I think, you know, like Stephanie mentioned, you know, feeling like you're part of a good work environment is, you know, the first step. But I think there's also, you know, various things that Maya is probably doing in her role in terms of putting together specific initiatives to make sure we're, you know, taking a look at sort of like how people are paid, how people are promoted, sort of like how can people sort of like submit issues that are happening at work. Do those get addressed, or, you know, is that something that like doesn't get addressed? What happens if, you know, you're part of a team where it's really not a good environment for you? What happens if you bring that up to someone other than your manager, who, you know, may be the person who is causing frustrations? Like, how does the company handle that? So, you know, I think there's a lot of ways to sort of address this. One, it's kind of like things that you can do as a person to maybe like be more welcoming to everyone on your team, everyone at your company. But then there's also very specific things that, you know, someone who has more power, such as a manager or a director, can do. And then, of course, there's just initiatives that are going to be company-wide that I think, you know, can tell you a lot about the priorities of that company. So all of those things really contribute to making someone, I guess, feel safe and welcome and included and valued at work.
Yeah, I am kind of thinking about, we were talking about motherhood, and obviously during the pandemic, folks who were caring for children, it was just the most challenging time in their lives, really. And I think, to have to hide those challenges or to not talk about like those personal things that you're experiencing day to day and how that might affect your work is not an inclusive environment. And to make space for folks to be like, open about like what they're needing when they have to do what they have to do is really important. And I think what you said about managers and leaders having that power to, just keep a pulse on how people are feeling and making sure that the burden of responsibility does not fall on those who are marginalized. I've heard stories of a friend of mine who, maybe was having a really difficult time with a coworker who was very hostile to her in code review and even in meetings, being actively critical of her work in meetings. And, her manager really didn't know how to handle that situation and kind of told her to see if she could work it out with that person, as opposed to, using that authority to maybe better encourage and hold people accountable to those, inclusive meeting and code review guidelines, to coaching that person and trying to, just spread the importance and value of, maintaining that space, that safe space. And I think at the level of the company, one thing that I've really appreciated about Thoughtbot is that DEI work is rewarded. It's part of your growth as a developer. You have to commit yourself to this work to make an impact at the company, and that looks like participating in the DEI Council. There's a rotating membership on the council, and that encourages folks, even just developers, designers, people on the business side to participate and make an impact on the rest of the company. That is felt, and it makes it feel important, and not just the work that falls on folks who are the ones most impacted by it. So those are a few things that come to mind for me.
You've made me think of a few things, Stephanie, when we were just talking, and you as well, Caterina. So it's important to note that DEI work is everybody's job. It's not just HR's job. It's not just talent's job. It's every single person in the company's job, in the world's job. But I'm not going to get into that. What's nice, what I can say in terms of the work that we're doing at Shopify. You mentioned, Caterina, kind of through some of the programs, or maybe it's HR strategies, et cetera. Having leadership really, talk the talk and, walk the walk and all those good things. We have a CTO who at every opportunity talks about how important diversity is, and what I love about what he mentions is he's kind of beyond the proving that it's good for business. We should know that now, we're kind of a few years into it. If you do a Google search, you can find all the percentages you need. So he's kind of beyond the talking about the benefits, but he will for those who maybe need to hear it. Kind of like, look, your outcomes are better, your teams perform better, you're going to make more money as an organization if you have different types of people in the workplace. And so it's just all of our jobs to have to make sure everybody feels good and feels included. And some of the things, and I mention it just in case it's helpful, some of the things we're looking at from a diversity and inclusion program perspective, partnerships is one. That's pretty straightforward. Are we partnering with different communities? So going where the people are, not just assuming Black people, lesbians are going to apply to us because, hey, we're this great company. It's let's go where the folks are, where the communities are, show that we are invested in learning about, working with, including these folks, and kind of remembering, well, your end user, your customers are so diverse, so we should be as well, so that we make better products and everything. Partnerships. And then on the retention side, I mean, that's a tougher one, right? And a lot of people talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And that belonging piece, what does that mean? Because I can feel included, and maybe I don't feel I belong. Like, it's a pretty personal thing. It's that idea that you can, be your full self, be your 100% true self. And then there'll be some folks who argue, well, I don't think I ever would want to be 100% my true self at work. Like, that's like a different thing. Anyway, I'm going on and on. So when we think about being the only, and I want to reference, yes, we've talked about, women, non-binary folks, like in terms of, let's say gender minority, everything we're talking about can be leveraged for the different communities that are historically ignored, historically marginalized, underserved, underrepresented. I am a woman, but I'm a Black woman. I am a queer Black woman. Like I'm thinking of all the different ways that intersectionality and how inclusion just matters for everybody. So when we think about being the only, sometimes you're the only, and take that however you will, of a particular group, team, department, company, even. What are some of the ways to access community or find the support that you need if you don't have it in your immediate space? And I'm going to kind of steal some of these ideas, and I would love to hear from you if there's some things that you're also doing, because I also see it parallel to 100% remote work. I'm an extrovert. I am struggling with being 100% remote. I miss people. So getting the community that I need, maybe outside of the norms, would love to hear kind of how we can do that. And then I'll legit want to hear if you have comments around that, and also questions that we can sneak in and play off of. Who wants to take that one first?
I can. Sorry about that. I can take that. But before I answer it, I also wanted to go back to something that Stephanie said, the code reviews. So I've got to share some data about a specific research paper that was done on code reviews, and specifically unnecessary code reviews. So at PSU, I primarily teach about web technologies and voice assistants, but I'm also co-teaching a class called Cultural Competence in Computing, and so I've just been reading a lot of information on this stuff, as we prep this class, and so I don't remember the exact name of the paper, but it's essentially code reviews at Google, and how many of them are necessary versus unnecessary, and so based on the research they've done, they found that there are about 1,000 wasted hours on unnecessary code reviews at Google, every day. And obviously, that data is very specific. You can sort of divide it up in terms of gender, in terms of race, and then also in terms of age. But it's sort of, it was really funny too. Not funny, funny is the wrong word here, but as I was the day that I was teaching this information, I was given feedback on a course proposal I submitted, which is, just part of the bureaucracy, so it wasn't really like a new course. But the feedback was actually, this entire email explaining the subject that I was teaching to me, and then it wasn't explained very well. And I got that email, and 2 hours later, I'm teaching this class and also going over this paper where we talk about code reviews, and all the times, your expertise is just not believed, and then all the extra work that you have to do, because I could have just not received that email, and we would have been great. But I had to respond to it. I had to send it to our department chair and be like, what? That also, I've been working there for a couple of years now, but even, before, in terms of PRs and code reviews, and I certainly remember, sometimes, going through so many different rounds of having to change very small things, and this needs to be renamed like this. Why? There's no real indication on why. And so I think a lot of, it's not that it happens once and then you sort of quit your job or quit tech, but it's where that keeps happening time and time again. And I am going to link this to your question in terms of okay, so how do you address this? And I think for me, the best way that I've been able to is really establishing a solid support network. And we're always told of having mentors and having sponsors, but I also found that a lot of times it's really about building a support group of friends and people that you can go to for those small things that happen that absolutely derail you a certain day, and you just feel it's just important to address it with someone else, and it's important to get feedback on am I crazy, or is this just, or is this inappropriate? Is this a toxic environment? Because I think sometimes if you're not able to recognize that, you might, you might have to be dealing with it, and it kind of too much exposure to that ultimately, leads to things like burnout, and leads to things like needing to just be done with tech. And so, I would say that support group. I know for me, the first 3 jobs that I've had in tech, I was the only developer, or the only woman developer on the team. I didn't think that affected me at all, but in retrospect, I think I would have preferred to have worked on different teams at the start of my career.
Yeah, I feel like I was very hesitant and didn't know how to get involved in the Ruby and Rails communities. Prior to joining WNB, I hadn't even really thought about going to conferences. I'm just I don't know, I'm just learning this technology. How do I there's a community. And yeah, seeing Emily and Gemma, the co-organizers of WNB, just promoting this thing, and they were yeah, we're having our first event. It'll be virtual, and I was just oh, okay, maybe I'll go to this thing and check it out. And then it has really grown a lot since then. I think they maybe had 50 people show up at the first meetup, where they gave a platform for women and non-binary speakers to give 20-minute talks and just learn from each other. And then since then, they've organized different things that the community needs. In fact, it's not even always them organizing within the group. They are so encouraging of people to start whatever they feel like they're needing, interview prep groups, CFP working groups. That was one I joined when I submitted a talk to RubyConf last year. Book clubs, and it's truly, I feel very empowered to start whatever thing I'm noticing that I'm needing, or just kind of ask around and be like, hey, like, would you be interested in this thing? And I actually asked Emily, how they even got the idea to start WNB. And she was just like, oh yeah, Gemma slid into my DMs. And so for folks who are feeling, that like, I'm not really sure if this thing exists yet, or I can't quite find it, we're all here this week. Like, this is a great opportunity to meet someone, just to turn around to them and be like, hey, I've certainly been trying to make eye contact with everyone I meet here, and just be like, how do I start a conversation with you? So yeah, when I think about finding community, just like being open to it, open to receiving it, open to reaching out. At least I personally know that I would love for anyone to come up to me and just start a conversation, or even now just say like, oh, I saw you on this panel. So yeah, that actually was very off the cuff there, but like thinking about how much more involved I've become since joining this community actually brings me a lot of joy. I don't know, hopefully you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
I love it. And you've both referenced this without using the word, but representation, and so how important it is, how representation really does matter. There are fewer women, non-binary folks in leadership roles. It's just a fact. Fewer Black people in leadership roles, Asian community, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I've been asked, oh, do you want to be a leader? And it's like, I've managed folks. I love managing people. I don't necessarily want to like, that's not my main goal, but I will definitely take on the opportunity so that we can show that, yes, you can do this, you can be a leader in the community, et cetera. Wanted to see if there were any questions in the few minutes that we had, even comments, or even, wanting to say, Stephanie, let's chat after. Hi. I'm going to repeat the question just in case of the backhand here, but thank you. I can't read your name, but thank you. Alan, thank you. So asking Stephanie, when we're talking about like WNB.RB, for example, how can one be an ally from, let's say, a non-marginalized community? How can you be an ally? How can you help support? I'll let you take that.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I know for a fact that they are very actively looking for sponsorship. And so, if you're in a leadership position, being able to give money to, fund the things that they do, including purchasing books for our book club for folks who might not be able to be, might not have a learning budget. I know that they, gave away a few conference tickets this week. If you're not in leadership, just like being aware that these organizations exist so that you can point your colleagues to them for folks who might be feeling a little more, wanting more community or wanting to connect with people who look like them. But sponsorship I'm not a co-organizer, but one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is just like how much work that they've been doing to try to expand the stuff that they do, and trust that they will put that money to good use for the community.
Did you want to add anything, Caterina, in terms of ways that maybe allies can support Women Who Code, or anything else you're a part of?
Sure. Sponsorship. I think every single organization can use more funds in terms of the events that we put together. I think also, I know as an organization we're always looking for speakers, and so sometimes that might be you, but sometimes there might be people presenting, sort of making connections to other people within the industry, other people within your company. Sometimes that can also be, like in terms of, I don't know that we're ever gonna have like in-person events anytime soon as like community organizations. But that can also be hosting at your company and being the person who stays after work to help that specific event happen. I know in the years prior to the pandemic, I know we had a lot of support that way as well.
Could do one sneaky last question. How do our companies how do they reward us for all the hard work that we're doing in DEI? Do you have answers for that, and I can jump in?
I feel like that's a perfect question for you, but Stephanie, if you want to also add.
Yeah, I do have an answer, at least specifically from what I've seen at ThoughtBot, and I don't know, honestly, I haven't seen other places do this, so I would be really curious to hear more about that too. But DEI is a whole area that is part of your kind of developer or just your skills evaluation, and so you are expected to contribute in that way in order to be promoted, and that is a way that it's been codified into our policies and our culture, which is, I don't know, that's the first that I've seen of it. So I thought that was really cool, and just making sure that folks know that is an expectation. I've seen just the way that we're able to have those conversations more openly because we're all on the same page that this is an expectation. So.
That is rare, and that is awesome that your company does that. Other ways to kind of reward folks for it. The people who are doing the work, let's say leadership of the employee resource group. So let's say, women at Shopify, the Black at Shopify, LGBTQ communities, et cetera. They are, hopefully I'm allowed to tell you, they're given a budget to be able to do some of the things they want to do for the community internally, being able to get together as a team. Again, we're 100% remote, so it is a big deal to be able to all meet in one place and spend time together to think about what you want to do in terms of, let's say, belonging campaigns for the year, being able to attend conferences, et cetera, that are related to the community. Those are some of the ways that folks are being rewarded. And then there's just the little side piece, which is just genuine nourishment. I'll speak for myself, and feeling really good about seeing the impact and having people tell the stories has been quite rewarding. Don't want to take up too much of your time. Lunch is opening up in 5 minutes. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. I'm not going to speak for them, but please, thank you so much. Again, stay hydrated, be wonderful, and thank you.